All right. So I'm live again. I'm pretty sure my mic is on. Apologize if the mic is not on. If the mic is not on and someone out there on the internet is watching me, just let me know my mic isn't working and guess I'll fix that for next time. So yeah, let me know. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Had a few things on my mind. Uh Chainsaw Man is always on my mind. Go read Chainsaw Man. It's really good. But I always talk about Chainsaw Man. Um, I'll probably just stream for a while tonight. I don't know. If I'm gonna talk the whole time. I'll probably read some Chainsaw Man at some point during the stream. So if anybody wants to just hop in with a little comment or chat or anything later on, then go for it. Uh, Besides Chainsaw Man, they want to talk about Quentin Tarantino and Kanye West. I think they're both at interesting points in their career. I'm a pretty big fan of both of them. And thinking about the fact that this new Donda album from Kanye West is his 10th album, and Quentin Tarantino is on his 10th movie, and he's always said after 10 movies he'll retire, kind of made me want to compare and contrast the two. I haven't really ever seen anyone try to compare the two, but I feel like they both have some interesting similarities. Just at the surface level, they both really enjoy anime. I mean, Quentin Tarantino had an anime in Kill Bill. Kanye West had some references to Akira and Stronger. I believe he actually went on Twitter and listed his favorite anime movies, or maybe movies and series. I don't know. I'd have to look real quick. I'm gonna look that up actually. Um, Let me see. Kanye West anime on Twitter. I'm just going back to see if he listed them at all here, because I want to say he did list the anime that are most interesting to him. Um, Let me see. I don't know how long ago it was, though. I feel like it's been quite some time. Um, what did he? I feel like he put it maybe on a list. Um, can't remember. Where did he? Where did he say it at? Uh, Man, why can I not find this? I feel like I found it pretty easily one time, but I don't know. I mean, looks like in 2018, Kanye West was with Kazuhiro Tomo. Looked like there were photos of that online. Um, Looks like he's also mentioned that he does not feel like Spirited Away is better than Akira. I'm just going through all this stuff back here. He's going through his Twitter history just off of Google search, but I feel like he released a list. At any rate, he definitely said that Akira is his biggest inspiration back in the day. So there's that too. Um, Looks like he also had posted some stuff in 2020 about manga all day and posted some Gundam pictures um, on his Twitter feed. I don't know. Anyway, that was kind of a deep dive into Kanye West's interest in anime for no real reason, but yeah, you can find that pretty easily if you just search Kanye West anime. Of course, Quentin Tarantino is also fascinated by anime. He has mentioned a few. Um, I'm trying to remember. I want to say Takeshi Koike was involved with the production of the anime that ended up in the middle of Kill Bill Volume 1. And Takeshi Koike went ahead and did Red Line. I believe he did character designs for Afro Samurai and created a brief animation sample for Afro Samurai too. That's pretty cool. That's on YouTube. Um, but Quentin Tarantino and Kanye West are similar in a lot of ways. They both sample a lot of other people. Some people would argue they both sample better artists or better creators to put together what they produce. They're both very astute perfectionists with keen attention to detail. They both don't like to release projects until they're just right. Um, Quentin Tarantino actually wasn't going to release The Hateful Eight because the script leaked online, but he ended up doing a table read with the actors and then decided to produce the film anyway, even though it leaked. But he was very much against the idea at first. I believe he just got a good reception to the table read and decided to produce the film anyway. Kanye West has had some leaks come up in the past. I believe he's had albums leak. Tarantino's written some things that have never seen the light of day. I believe he actually did write a Star Trek script and maybe something for the Vega brothers. I mean, him and Kanye West are very similar because they will mention projects they want to do or say what project is coming up next. It'll just never materialize, like having John Travolta and Michael Madsen together as brothers, or making a part 3 of Kill Bill that brings back the daughter of Vivica Fox's character. So they kind of just get inspired to say things or to produce things in the moment, but most of it never materializes. Quentin Tarantino was saying he wanted to make a Star Trek movie, and I mean, for the most part, people knew that was pretty out there. Just like Kanye West released The Life of Pablo, then turned back around and said he's putting out TurboGrafx 16 the same year. Most people knew that didn't really make a ton of sense, but just decided to roll with it. Um, you can definitely see that both have massive egos. Quentin Tarantino definitely has a very distinct vision and view of himself that can't be shaken, that he refuses to see outside of without any kind of real self awareness or humor about himself. Um, Kanye West is the same way, of course. Both of them really don't have a sense of humor about themselves. They do have senses of humor, they do make jokes, but they don't think they're funny. They don't like being the butt of jokes. They take their craft very seriously. They take their lives very seriously. They take the art that they produce very seriously. Um, I guess where the two diverge is, and I could be wrong, so I'm definitely open to debate or reinterpretation or feedback or criticism, but I believe the two diverge because Kanye West's work actually means something, or at least aspires to make some kind of a larger thematic point. Um, there are some kind of emotions being teased out, or emotions meant to be elicited from the listener. I don't know that Quentin Tarantino has ever tried to make a point with a movie. I don't think Quentin Tarantino movies mean anything. I don't think Quentin Tarantino makes points when he produces films. I think he wants you to bask in his coolness. I think he just wants you to know he's cooler than you, or he has a deeper knowledge of cinema than you, or he wants to share esoteric cinema with you, or homage different films chop up different films, almost like Kanye West does with samples, really, and then string them all together and produce a film out of it and pull together an eclectic mix of samples that cinephiles can see, identify, and then kind of enjoy in their own fraternal way and understand, yes, I'm a part of the in group too. So the Quentin Tarantino movies are essentially 2.5 hour in jokes to some degree because I don't know what they mean. I don't know what they're trying to say or why they exist. Um, the Suicide Squad has actually kind of put me in this mood of reviewing old films and thinking about their meaning. Somebody had mentioned that the new Suicide Squad was a combination of Tim Burton and Quentin Tarantino, but I don't really know that Quentin Tarantino means anything or is trying to say anything with his movies. And Tim Burton definitely has a reoccurring theme around outsiders, around freaks, around having sympathy for those that are viewed as outcasts. Um, Especially in his earlier work, when we get into the Disney times and Dark Shadows and everything after Sweeney Todd, he definitely becomes much more commercial, but a lot of his artistic ticks are still there. Um, Even with something like Dumbo, the concept of Dumbo is very Tim Burton. Um, but Quentin Tarantino doesn't really have a theme. I mean, if you look at Inglorious Bastards, the theme is Nazis are bad, I guess. Lying is bad. I don't know. War is bad. I mean, none of the themes are very dense or hard to see. Pretty self-explanatory. I wouldn't even really say they're themes. They're just kind of inherent in telling a story about a war, especially World War II. Um, if I were to think about Pulp Fiction, maybe there's themes around chance, around coincidence. Um, but then that kind of comes out of the idea of chopping up the timeline and putting things out of order. So again, it's kind of inherent in the film. I don't know if it's necessarily a theme. Um, Pulp Fiction might have some themes around chance encounters, um, people deriving meaning from things that other people see no meaning in. Uh, you have the you have the diner robbers that are just robbing for money, don't really see anything else in it. It's mostly just survival. Samuel Jackson is there to intervene and almost turn it into a sermon. Earlier on, John Travolta's character doesn't really see the significance in bullets missing him and Samuel Jackson in their morning hit, but Jackson does recognize the significance in it, sees it as divine intervention, and then responds accordingly. So maybe there are also some things about repentance, with Butch repenting, leaving the life he led before and running away with his girlfriend. So there might be something there to pull out, but other than that, I don't like Reservoir Dogs. The theme is not to lie. I don't know. Lying is bad. Robbing people is bad. I don't know. Trust no one. Violence is bad. I don't know. Really nothing too profound there. Jackie Brown. Um, don't don't traffic drugs as a flight attendant. Uh, you still get grooved no matter the age. Um, Respect women. I don't know. Kill Bill. Get revenge. Um, Revenge is a never-ending cycle, maybe. But is that really something that needed to be illuminated or in any way underutilized as a theme? I don't know. I don't think so. So nothing particularly revelatory about Quentin Tarantino's art. Again, I think the emphasis is on cool. I think the emphasis is on style. I think he's more interested in creating worlds or creating characters that people find interesting. Um, I don't think that should be necessarily a fault. I think more directors and writers should work to create compelling, interesting characters. But beyond those compelling, interesting characters, I don't know that the characters and the situations they find themselves in mean anything. They don't. I don't think they say anything. Another interesting point is, well, I guess a point of divergence is, um, well, similarity and divergence. Um, Quentin Tarantino made a movie with Robert Rodriguez, and it was Death Proof and Planet Terror. Kanye West made Watch the Throne with Jay-Z. You could argue whether or not Robert Rodriguez is the Jay-Z of film. I would argue to a certain degree he is actually the Jay-Z of film because he's managed to create his own world, create his own film studios, work outside the system, focus on owning his own work. Um, I believe Robert Rodriguez is very astute in the film business. Do it yourself guy, just the same way Jay Z was able to come in with his own label, create his own premiere album. Robert Rodriguez was able to go out and create his own film with El Mariachi outside of the film studio system and kind of force his way into the conversation as a filmmaker to watch. I actually think that was around the time that Jay Z put Reasonable Doubt out. Actually, let me see. So this metaphor might go much further than I ever initially imagined. So Robert Rodriguez might be the Jay Z of film. It's like Tarantino's the Kanye West of film. But let me see. We're gonna investigate that right now. We are about to see exactly when El Mariachi came out. And oh no, El Mariachi was actually 92. So that was way, way, way earlier. So nope, that doesn't quite click, but the point still stands though. Because they both funded their films independently and then actually they're around the same age though. So Robert Rodriguez is 2 years older. But yeah, they're around the same age. Reasonable Doubt was 96. Um El Mariachi was 92. So I mean around the same time, and they both had the same ambitions and came from outside of the typical system. They kind of wrote their own ticket, made their own way, and had to bootstrap it. So things worked out very well for them. So yeah, Tarantino is the Kanye West, Robert Rodriguez is the Jay Z of film, and there you go. But Watch the Throne was very well received critically. Um, it might have really been Kanye West's last universally lauded music. I think after Watch the Throne, we got into Cruel Summer, then we got into Yeezus, Life of Pablo. Things kind of went off the rails critically. I've enjoyed all of his music to varying degrees over the last 20 years, but Tarantino, of course, did not give very good reviews for the Grindhouse film. I thought it was all right. Again, looking back at it, does it mean anything? Was Death Proof trying to really say anything? Kurt Russell, murdering women is bad, or you know, don't terrorize women, or I don't know, the old ways, the old concepts of masculinity are dead or dying, or women are no longer tolerating the same kind of bad behavior from men that used to just be standard or used to be encouraged by film or by society. Um, I don't know. I don't really think Death Proof was trying to say anything. I think he just wanted to make a movie with his friends and he wanted Kurt Russell to be in it. He always wanted to work with Kurt Russell and just created that stuntman Mike character for him. Brought back the stunt double for Uma Thurman from Kill Bill and made her one of the leads. just wanted to knock out a film real quick. I don't. Again, I don't really think it meant anything, especially when you consider if there was some kind of a point to be made about female exploitation, he wouldn't work with Harvey Weinstein. So don't really know what points he could be making. And of course, Quentin Tarantino's been accused of his own bad behavior surrounding women as well. So I don't really know if that kind of thing really bears out. I don't know if there's any theme to be parsed out of Death Proof or any of his movies as a whole. But I mean, continuing that metaphor, you have Cruel Summer from Kanye West. That was a kind of a compilation situation that brought together people from across good music. I think Two Chainz was involved, but I don't think Two Chainz is part of good music. And at the same time, well, not at the same time, but on the other hand, or parallel you can draw between Kanye West and Quentin Tarantino is the fact that I believe he also had an anthology that he worked on. I want to say Four Rooms. He was maybe he was a director on Four Rooms. I want to say. So yeah, Four Rooms was from '95, and Robert Rodriguez was there. Um, so yeah, you could kind of say Four Rooms is the Cruel Summer of his filmography. Um, but I think one part, or the most important part of the similarity between Kanye West and Quentin Tarantino is their influence on their genres, on their styles of art. Um, there's no denying that Quentin Tarantino has been heavily influential in film for the last 30 years, for better or for worse. And there's no way to deny that Kanye West has been extremely influential over the last 20 years, creating a lot of new musical styles, um, bringing a lot of topics that were kind of taboo in rap to the forefront, and kind of creating a lane for other artists that might not be gangsters to try to thrive. In particular, Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, they all needed Kanye West to some degree to flourish. Um, Quentin Tarantino, of course, I mean, Joe Carnahan comes to mind, from the perspective of being a DIY person and just kind of getting yourself out there. Soderbergh comes to mind. The Russo brothers come to mind. Paul Thomas Anderson comes to mind, just as people that are inspired by his kind of do-it-yourself aesthetic that got Reservoir Dogs made. Um, then when it comes to the dialogue and the back and forth and the kind of the sassiness, I mean, it's really hard to avoid it at all. Sampling other people's films and kind of the jibber jabbery dialogue that was back and forth, kind of patter, snappy patter, that kind of deal is all over film. So modern film of the last 30 years since he originally jumped on the scene. So it's really kind of hard to deny. There's no way around that. Um, what else? So they've both been very successful, both been very influential. But again, I believe where they diverge is just purpose. I think Kanye West creates his art with a purpose, creates it to inspire, creates it to challenge people's perceptions, creates it to um, work through a theme or challenge preconceived notions or kind of create a thesis that is meant to be tested, investigated, and then put into a dialogue. I don't necessarily know that Quentin Tarantino's work is a dialogue. I think it's a monologue. I think Quentin Tarantino puts his work out and it's really just meant to be seen. I don't think it's meant to be digested. I think it's something you're supposed to pass by. I think it's something you're supposed to experience the same way you would experience a painting on a wall. Um, you're kind of disengaged because there's a distance between you and the artist and the distance between you and the work. And I think he's purposely trying to keep up a barrier between the public and his work. Even when you look at the actors, He uses the Brad Pitts of the world. Um, he's trying to use the Leonardo DiCaprio of the world. He wants to use the biggest possible artists across the largest possible canvases to create that distance. He's not going a Linklater dazed and confused route and finding, that next Martin, I'm sorry, the next Matthew McConaughey, the next Ben Affleck. He's not going to those kind of the smaller, harder to identify actors now. There was a time when he did go out and get the Harvey Keitels or Steve Buscemi's of the world and give them a platform, equal footing with Bruce Willis or John Travolta. Went out and found Samuel L. Jackson and pretty much gave him a career. So um, you could argue that to some degree he had an everyman ish style at first, but as he's gotten more successful, he's also gotten more detached from the day to day struggles. I mean, you could argue the same thing at Kanye West. After maybe graduation, things started to get a little out of hand. But there's also an interesting trajectory to trace between graduation, then his mother passing, and then something like 808s and Heartbreak, and then going on almost a 10-year odyssey from graduation, or more than 10-year odyssey, going from graduation to Donda, and then seeing a lot of themes and a lot of lyrics come full circle from his earliest work. But he's always been very self-referential. Tarantino's the same way. I believe all of his films take place in the same universe, and he uses the uh same cigarette brands or additional little logos, branding, and in jokes, character names that reference other Tarantino stories. So um, Kanye West has always kind of dug into his own work, referenced his own work, mentioned himself. Um, some of it is inherent to rap, but most of it can be attributed to his ego. And in comparing the two, I think Quentin Tarantino's deficiencies as an artist are more apparent. Again, I think Kanye West is constantly trying to evolve. I think he's challenging himself as an artist. I think he's challenging his audience with the work he does. I think producing something like Jesus is potentially catastrophic. I mean, if your fans absolutely cannot tolerate it, then I mean, what was the purpose? If you, it's okay to be confrontational, but you have to give people an end, some way to want to engage with the product. If you make it too sharp, too prickly, too strange, people just will ignore it and actually dislike you more. It creates more distance and makes them look back at your past work in a different light that's more negative. Um, I would say Kanye West kind of calibrated Yeezus perfectly to be something that listeners with an open mind could enjoy. But if you wanted something closer to his old work, then you would be disappointed. But ultimately, it wasn't super off putting. You could find those in routes and find ways to enjoy it and investigate it and kind of learn more about the music he was sampling and referencing. It was an interesting read, interesting listen. It was a dense listen. Um, it wasn't graduation. It wasn't 808s and Heartbreak. It wasn't My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. It was something new, and it was something meant to shock the audience, shock the typical listener. Quentin Tarantino has more or less stayed in the same lane and just kind of dug deeper into his own interests, his own fetishes. Each movie's kind of just taking him a step closer to realizing this ultimate navel gazing experience. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was kind of that uh, ultimate exercise in solipsism. I think he's just become very enamored of himself. And Once Upon a Time in Hollywood made no sense. I think it was exactly what Yeezus could have been. I mean, it was very obtuse. It was boring. It was long. It was full of references only he would understand. It's full of references only people of a certain age, certain demographic and that were around in a certain time in a certain location would understand and appreciate. Um, and there were a lot of things that broke film conventions and logic for no real reason. Um, I mean, there was no explanation for the violence that befell the Manson family. I mean, if you know the history of the Manson family, you would know why they're attacked. But in the context of the film, it's completely random, violent outbursts from Brad Pitt. It seems like it's meant to be funny in the context of the film or the way it was composed. Um, then I don't really know what the purpose of Bruce Lee being included in the film was, especially if the other characters are fake. Why not just create a fake Bruce Lee analog or even create a Clint Eastwood analog that Brad Pitt could beat up? I mean, there are other actors, an Andy Griffith analog. I mean, um, Muhammad Ali. Um, Trying to think of someone else that could have been brought in. Chuck Norris. I mean, there are a lot of different people that could have just been used as stand-ins instead of Bruce Lee. So having Bruce Lee get beat up by Brad Pitt was just ridiculous. It was jumping the shark to the highest level possible, especially when anyone that even has just a modicum of interest in Bruce Lee and has looked up his life and past knows he revered Muhammad Ali. So for Quentin Tarantino to write in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Bruce Lee claimed he would beat up Muhammad Ali. You know, it's not true, and it's sensational for no reason. It's kind of a dumb thing to add that directly contradicts the character of the person. So it immediately takes you out of the film, and it just feels like a writer putting words in the mouth of a real person. And it's kind of tacky and corny and sad, and really just made me look at everything Quentin Tarantino created before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood differently. I was very excited to see the movie, but coming out of it, I was baffled because it was just really so bad. That and Midsummer were just too self-indulgent, but not self-aware. So it's kind of strange to be both. To indulge yourself completely, really think you're pushing boundaries, but then have no self-awareness. I think The Lighthouse, which came out the same year with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, avoided all that by being interesting, by being visually engaging, being unexpected. It was long and self-indulgent, but it was also self-aware. So there's a way to do both, balance both. The best movies that are self-indulgent do both. I think Ridley Scott with Gladiator is the same way. He wanted to create that big sword and sandal epic, but also just had a meat and potato story to give. Just had a lot of momentum to it. It's interesting. Um, I'm trying to think of what Quentin Tarantino's big purpose was, big theme was with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Um, the past was better. Um, this was a better time in history. 68 was the year Hollywood lost its innocence. But again, there have been books that talk about the same topic. So I don't know if any of the points he brings up in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or in any of his filmography are especially unique or so vividly realized that they're transcendent or sublime. I think he's really good at casting, and I would say that's also a strength of Kanye West too, picking the right person to be the right feature, the right producer for the right track. Because I mean, even when it comes down to something like Monster or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Kanye West knew Nicki Minaj had a great verse, and instead of cutting her off of Monster, highlighted it and broke her career, changed the whole trajectory of her time as an artist because he went out of his way, recognized her talent, and gave her a break, put her on the album in a major way and feature in a major way. Um, One element that is unique to Kanye West is kind of the emotional outbursts that antagonize specific groups or individuals. Um, like with Kanye West and the Drake beef situation, I don't really understand that. I don't know if Quentin Tarantino has a parallel, maybe Bill O'Reilly, but that's not really a constant beef kind of hanging over his head. Maybe the closest thing is Paul Thomas Anderson. I think Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson have a Kanye West Drake relationship. I think Quentin Tarantino is very cocky, feels very strongly about his film output, but understands that Paul Thomas Anderson has got his number. And I would say Paul Thomas Anderson is a better filmmaker. I would say that Paul Thomas Anderson is making movies with themes that mean something. Um, they're also cool. They also have compelling dialogue. They're also interesting, but they serve a purpose. There's some kind of a moral and not just a simple moral. It's something you would have to get from rewatching the film or from kind of digesting what you just saw over time, whether it's Boogie Nights, Punch Drunk Love, Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, um, all of Paul Thomas, The Master, all of Paul Thomas Anderson's films are well cast, well written, and of a very consistent quality. So Quentin Tarantino is very aware of the critical reception of his movies. He's very protective of the critical reception to his movies. He makes sure people understand that he has a flawless record. He wants to maintain his flawless record, does not appreciate dissenters, um, and doesn't like the asterisk that is over his filmography with Death Proof. So Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't have that asterisk, and I think it rubs him the wrong way. I think it bothers him. I believe he nitpicked one of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies because of that, just in that attitude and that spirit of trying to take Paul Thomas Anderson down a peg because he's really the only director more revered than Quentin Tarantino in Hollywood. And he's also worked with Daniel Day-Lewis numerous times. And I think that bothers Quentin Tarantino that Paul Thomas Anderson is considered as more legitimate, um, definitely more of a critical darling. I don't think Tarantino appreciates that. I believe they've even made the same number of movies. Let me check. I want to make sure, but I think the Kanye West Drake, Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson comparison is very valid and uh very similar. I mean, in Quentin Tarantino's time off, as he kind of laid fallow after Kill Bill, Paul Thomas Anderson popped up and really made a big splash with There Will Be Blood, with The Master. So Quentin Tarantino is trying to produce bigger things. One might even say a blockbuster with some like Django Unchained. And then Paul Thomas Anderson puts out The Master. And it's of a totally different caliber, totally different universe, saying bigger things, asking bigger questions. And it really makes Quentin Tarantino seem kind of juvenile. So I think to a certain degree, it kind of rubs him the wrong way. Um, so Quentin Tarantino has directed one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. So looks like it's 10 if you count Death Proof, but I don't think he wants to count Death Proof. So we'll call it 9 movies. Then if we go over to Paul Thomas Anderson, let's see how many he has created. Um, go over here to the filmography. Is one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. All right, so there is a movie called Soggy Bottom coming from Paul Thomas Anderson that isn't out yet. So He has 8 movies out. So Tarantino has more movies out, but their quality is of a much higher, just scatter shot variety. Quentin Tarantino's movies are sometimes well received, sometimes not. But all Paul Thomas Anderson movies are pretty much universally acclaimed as the greatest films of their years of release. Um, and some of the greatest films of all time. And I think Paul Thomas Anderson is a lot less neurotic. I don't believe that Paul Thomas Anderson is really living in his head the same way Quentin Tarantino lives in his. I think he has better dialogue because of that. I think he's less stylized, but still just as interesting and punchy because I believe Paul Thomas Anderson is more of a listener. And Tarantino is more of a talker. You can kind of tell in interviews, you can tell from the work that they produce, and you can see that Paul Thomas Anderson is more of an astute observer of human behavior. And Tarantino kind of creates broad caricatures of human behavior that are interesting for people to watch up on screen. But Paul Thomas Anderson has greater attention to those little details and the idiosyncrasies that make people human and make his films believable. Um, if you look at even the concept of a career rehabilitation, the route Quentin Tarantino takes to a career rehabilitation is to make John Travolta do drugs or kind of dance and be trippy and um, I guess take him to a more comedic place. Um, but on the flip side of that, Paul Thomas Anderson can take Adam Sandler out of the Mr. Deeds world, out of the Little Nicky world, and then put him in the Punch Drunk Love universe, make him more serious, and just instead of contradicting what has come before, drill down on the sources and the reasons behind the behavior that's been observed in other Adam Sandler films and really trying to create a coherent psychology out of what you've seen before instead of trying to reinvent that person, doubling down and honing in and then pulling some realism out of their behavior, trying to find little idiosyncrasies, trying to find little ways to put human touches within the persona Adam Sandler already produced. Um, Instead of trying to create a whole new one from scratch and then peppering it with details that might play to the strengths of the performer. Um, I think that you can also see in the way that Paul Thomas Anderson brings back collaborators, whether it's Daniel Day Lewis, whether it's Philip Seymour Hoffman, um, he's John C. Riley. He is giving you different shades of the performers. Um, when Quentin Tarantino puts Samuel Jackson in a movie, he's more or less in one gear. He's in the Samuel Jackson Tarantino gear that he needs him to be in. Brad Pitt, same thing. He's pretty much in the same gear. He pulls actors, puts them in a situation, and pretty much just needs them to do what he sees them doing in his head. He just wants them to go there. They don't necessarily have to go color outside the lines or bring anything different to the performance each time. Um, Even with uh I guess Hans Landa too from Inglourious Bastards, the same thing. He's Landa in Inglourious Bastards. He's a dentist in Django Unchained, but essentially we're looking at the same character with different outfits. Cadences are the same, the monologues are the same. Um, but the behavior that we appreciate in Inglourious Bastards is polite and the tone of voice and the overall demeanor are no longer used to disarm. They're actually endearing qualities. So it doesn't really create that conflicting sense that, hey, I kind of sympathize with what this guy that's hunting down Jewish people is doing. I I think I like his mannerable side. I think I find something attractive or interesting in him. Um, in Django Unchained, he's just attractive, interesting, and mannerable, and you're just supposed to like him. He's supposed to be endearing. There's really no conflict there. There's nothing to, and he frees slaves, so he's just a really good guy. There's just no way around it. There's nothing you're supposed to question about that character or his motivations. Um, Paul Thomas Anderson is digging into the soul of the performer by pulling different kinds of people out of them each time. Philip Seymour Hoffman in Boogie Nights, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Punch Drunk Love, and Philip Seymour Hoffman in The Master are operating in very different modes, very different moods, very different tones. Um, they're very different people. Each time he's calling on Philip Seymour Hoffman to be something different, totally different, without any attempts to appeal to his persona outside of film, outside of the context of that film either. Each performance is supposed to stand on its own and is not referencing any past performances or any behaviors the actor might be known for in their personal, private lives. Daniel Day Lewis's character in There Will Be Blood and The Phantom Thread have nothing to do with each other. Um, they operate at two different paces. The films that they're inside of operate at two different speeds. Um, and they call on a performer like Daniel Day Lewis to move away from gimmickry and method performance. It's not about just being method for the sake of being method, but trying to actually create a seamless human performance, trying to create something that feels like a person, a whole person being captured on film, not just a performance that was conjured up for a few hours every day on set and then immediately disappears. Um, they work together to create well-rounded characters that feel lived in, that feel like people that really exist. I don't know if Quentin Tarantino appreciates that. I think he can see that. I think it bothers him. I think he just really gets scared knowing that there's a Paul Thomas Anderson out there. I mean, they both put one of them put out The Master in 2012. The other one put out Django Unchained the same year. So it's not really even a comparison there. That's like saying, one kid won their science fair by creating a baking soda volcano, and another kid at that same science fair just completely threw the judges for a loop, and it looked like the volcano was going to win. And that kid actually just went out and cloned a dinosaur, just created an entire Jurassic Park dinosaur and brought it to the science fair for the middle school. So they're in two different leagues, operating in two different modes, two different disciplines, trying to elicit different feelings from viewers. But this has kind of turned into a weird diatribe that compares Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson. But my point was just to say the same way that Quentin Tarantino is nervous when he thinks about Paul Thomas Anderson, Kanye West is nervous when it comes to Drake. He's shook when it comes to new Drake music. That's the only person he feels like has got his number and can put him in check. And I don't know what really caused the issue there, but there's a much higher, much more publicized problem there. Quentin Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson just kind of have like a frenemy thing, just kind of a cold war where they don't really comment on each other, but there is tension there just because I think Quentin Tarantino just doesn't like the idea of there being a better, more critically acclaimed filmmaker than him out there, younger than him, also independent, also never done a studio thing, a big tent pole or summer blockbuster nonsense thing. Um, but yeah, Kanye West. is a very interesting artist, a very unpredictable artist. I think listening to the Donda album these last two times, these last two events has made me appreciate him more because they kind of work like a greatest hits compilation, but also touch on some of the religious themes that he's been dealing with in albums like Jesus King or College Dropout. Um, I think there's a level of thoughtfulness that went into Donda that hasn't gone into his last few albums. I think you can see that just in the time he's taking to release this album and constantly push it back. I mean, you could say it's procrastination or trying to build hype artificially, but I think he's really just trying to create the best product possible. And Quentin Tarantino is the same way to some degree. I think he's waiting to put out his 10th film or even announce it because he wants to let it percolate a little bit, let it marinate, come out with something really interesting and compelling. Um, Now, I don't think this 10th project will be Kanye West's final album. I think he just really enjoys making music a lot, but I do think he has a point to prove. I think he has a chip on his shoulder with this album because ever since he got involved in fashion, ever since he started creating, the shoes that made him a billionaire, people have written him off as an artist that is just playing at music, but is more interested in fashion. So I think he's really keen to prove to people that he's a great musician too, that he has something to say artistically too, um, in the music world. Quentin Tarantino, I don't think necessarily has a chip on his shoulder. Um, I thought Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was trash, but I think I'm the only person. I didn't. Well, maybe Richard Brody from the New Yorker too. I think I read a negative review from him, who I've always appreciated. I thought he gave pretty good reviews, but yeah, I didn't really understand Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or why people thought it was so cool. So maybe he will come into his 10th movie with more of a chip on his shoulder, more of a point to prove. And maybe this will be his first movie to really be trying to make some kind of thematic point or become sublime or poignant in some way, or even reveal something new about a performer or an ideology that we hadn't considered before we sat down and watched his latest movie. Um, but what do you guys think? Is there any credence to my idea that Kanye West and Quentin Tarantino are similar, or that Kanye West is a better artist than Quentin Tarantino, more thematically intriguing, um, more attentive to what his work means in an audience, more interested in creating a dialogue, creating conversation with his audience, or am I totally off base? I mean, if anybody wants to sit through this whole hour long video and then respond back, I'd appreciate it. It's pretty long, but hopefully, if you've been listening, something about it was interesting. Hopefully, some of it made you think. Um, guess I can talk about Chainsaw Man, or I can just kind of wait here and read Chainsaw Man. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to say anything else, but I'll just hang out on the stream for a second and read some Chainsaw Man. I think I'll put some drawings up like this. Okay, Chainsaw Man has a reference to Paradise Lost. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of things going on in Chainsaw Man beneath the surface of the work. Um, it's really not fair to compare Chainsaw Man to other manga. It's not fair to compare Chainsaw Man to other comic books. I don't really know if there's too much literature working at as many levels as Chainsaw Man is working. Um, Chainsaw Man is subversive and gives you things you didn't know you want in a good way. I believe Ryan Johnson meant to create something like Chainsaw Man when he created The Last Jedi. That was terrible and subverted expectations in all the wrong ways. And something like Chainsaw Man is subverting expectations, creating new expectations and subverting the new expectation it created, while also giving you some interesting philosophical questions to ponder, giving you some great action scenes, um, creating very iconic and memorable characters, iconic and memorable character designs. There's really just um, a lot to take in Chainsaw Man. It's very dense. It's a dense world. The comic book itself is really dense. Um, a lot of great pages, a lot of great sequences. The storytelling is very cinematic and has a lot of great momentum. Um, Probably can't see very well, but there are a lot of great kinetic action scenes, a lot of great momentum and movement, a lot of weird designs. Very H.R. Giger design here with this devil. I think it's pretty obvious to say that this devil is a reference to Alien. I think you can definitely see the Giger influence there. Um, Maybe a little bit of the Tokyo Gore Police, kind of the trauma, um, gory, body horror type stuff going on too, along with Giger. Um, I don't know. Chainsaw Man is hard to understand because it's also just coming out of nowhere. So there's really no context for it. It came out fully formed. It develops into something really unique and strange week to week. And it's really hard to comprehend exactly what's being referenced in Chainsaw Man. There's so many things coming from so many eclectic angles. But anyway, I talk about Chainsaw Man all the time. That is nothing new. So you guys go watch Chainsaw Man. Well, I guess read it for now. Then when the anime comes out, go watch it. It's going to be the greatest work of art in the history of animation, if it lives up to the comic book at all, to any degree. But um, there just, I mean, there are a remarkable number of memorable action scenes, memorable villains, so much attention paid to detail. Um, the detail in buildings. I don't even know if my camera on my computer can do it justice, but there's just a lot of work, a lot of attention to detail being paid across every page. Um, every sequence is plotted so well, has so much momentum. Um, Big stretches of the book go without any kind of dialogue. I think the book transcends dialogue to some degree, transcends language works without an understanding of Japanese. Um, it's just a great story. Y'all check it out. Talk to y'all later.